What is up, my bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today's video is on the second episode of the 2020 checklist. This is the series in which we're going over those bodyweight standards, those bodyweight levels that I laid out in a video a while back. I'll link to the first episode, which went over the handstand push-up, tips and tricks to get that, as well as the original video in which we laid out the standards that I think are worth aiming for and are worth your time to train towards. Enough rambling anyway, let's jump into this week's episode. So today's episode we're going to be talking about the planche, kind of my arch nemesis when it comes to bodyweight training. The planche is actually one of the things that first got me into bodyweight training. Initially I saw it and I was like, that seems awesome, and it was instantly one of those things that was top of my checklist. We're not going to go into how many years ago that was. So getting on 5 years ago now, I started training a little bit for planche, and it's basically been a struggle ever since. Some things making more progress than others, and with anything, plenty of mistakes along the way. But there has been progress in that struggle. Things have progressed, things are getting close to where it wants to be on the checklist, which I'm gonna go and share with you in this video, what I've learnt personally, and what I'm gonna be doing this year to make sure I finally tick things off, because things are getting closer. Also, if you can't see behind me, I've moved into this house about 5 months ago, 6 months ago now, and we've been like slowly working on painting and decorating. Finally got round to the study, the way I do work every single day. What do you think? Let me know. But yeah, I've been planning on doing a video that is like how I make these videos, what I use to make these videos, and kind of a brief tour of this sort of thing. If that is something you're interested in, then let me know. I'd love to make it, and I'd love to know if you're interested. So back to the planche, and I kind of want to jump to the next part of this video, which is essentially excuses as to why I can't do the planche just yet. The planche is not an easy skill, and I would say out of the checklist, out of those things that this kind of whole video series is based on, I would say the planche is by far the hardest to attain. This is supported by some evidence. Obviously, there was the recent survey that I did and kind of reviewed that was based on a Reddit poll. In that, 3% of people said that they could planche. Again, what constitutes to a planche was a little bit more confusing. In the most recent survey, which I'm currently doing the analysis of, I can confirm that this is essentially what we're looking at. Almost half the people cannot do a tuck planche whatsoever. That is quite a large percentage of the population. It doesn't mean those people are weak, it means the planche is a hard skill. So I know that we see people on Instagram or whatever doing full planches and busting them out all the time. It's important to understand that those people are in the very small percentage of people who actually do bodyweight training. So that's excuse number one, the planche is hard. But because it is hard doesn't mean we can't do it. It's not a good excuse, so that's why I have more of them, which I'm going to tell you now. So excuse number two is that I'm tall and heavy, and that in general doesn't help with calisthenics. Now, for some reason I thought that standing up would give some sort of idea of scale, but it doesn't really. Essentially, I'm tall. I am 191 centimeters tall, otherwise 6'3.5", not quite 6'4", and I weigh about 90 kilos, which is around 200 pounds, I believe. That in comparison to gymnasts is quite tall and quite heavy, and they're generally the best people when it comes to these sort of things. So I'm certainly not made for it. I've actually made a whole video in the past, so I will just link to that one in the description down below as to why it is hard to be tall and to do calisthenics. There were some examples that I do follow on Instagram that I was trying to find, but I can't remember the names because they're basically all Russian or Eastern European, and I'm sure gravity is slightly different in that part of the world. It's just that the method to attain that end skill is going to be a little bit different to somebody who is naturally more set up to do that skill, who is perhaps a bit shorter, a bit stronger. They're going to have an easier time picking this up, and that's what this video is about. It's tips to achieve the planche, whatever ability you're at. For some talented people, you may just be able to repeatedly attempt to do the planche, and eventually you'll get yourself to be able to do the planche. But for a lot of people, especially people my height, people taller than me, that's not going to give you the best results long term, if any. So without further ado, let's actually jump into some tips and some advice and share with you what I'm currently doing in today's workouts. Just as a foreknote, current training for the planche is slightly unusual. I will explain the reasons why, and hopefully it helps you out with your training. Let's go. Was that a bench press? But this is body weight, bro. This is calisthenics. We're not supposed to use weights. Weights are bad. I'm triggered. Right, so now we got that out of the way, I wanted to kind of talk through not only today's training session, but kind of my planche training in general, because there's certainly some things that I've learned along the way which I didn't know initially, and now knowing it, I wish I had known, because I probably would have saved myself quite a bit of time. Okay, number one, most of the time people don't have much success with the tuck planche because they simply don't have the base in place. Now, this was certainly not the case when I first started training. The reason for this is I trained weight training. I did a mixture of bodybuilding and powerlifting for a number of years before I actually got into bodyweight training initially. And what that gave me was a pretty good base when it came to general strength. I was pretty strong at bench press, I was pretty strong at overhead press, pretty strong at pull-ups. I had all of that basic strength, which if you look at the bodyweight levels that I laid out, there's some decent numbers in there in basic, not beginner, that I think you need to be able to hit so that you have not necessarily the prerequisites, but just the strength to actually support doing some decent planche training. If you don't do this, if you don't put this into practice, then you will get to a point, and I personally did this, where it's just not gonna work. You're not gonna be able to realize your own strength potential because you're not strong enough. I'm not strong enough at the end of the day. So this would include working on things like pike push-ups, just normal push-ups. But then as we get a little bit more specific, we can look at using things like pseudo planche push-ups. Now, I guess the actual planche strength, you'll notice in today's workout, I'm not actually going to be using a whole lot of straight arm movements. In fact, I'm starting off the session with some planche holds, but you will notice that the elbows are bending, and this is actually on purpose. I'm not just using bad form for the sake of bad form. I'm purposely bending the elbows. So the reason I'm using bent arm is I'm actually trying just to figure out how to better use that intermuscular coordination. How can I coordinate contracting my muscles better to support my straight arm planche? And the best way for me personally to do this at the moment and figure it out is by doing bent arm planche. I mean, you can try this one for yourself. Try your tuck planche and then try it with just a little bit from the top and slightly bent. And just feel the difference in contraction. Personally, when I'm doing my planche, I cannot feel my chest working. The chest is an important part of the planche. But when I bend the arm slightly, I straight away get that contraction, which is why I'm using this drill. Just as a general rule of thumb as well, straight arm strength doesn't always give the best results when it comes to the planche. I personally could do planche holds all day, every day, and I wouldn't get any better than them. In fact, I'd probably get worse doing some dynamic movements. Something like a planche press, for example, or planche negatives are really fantastic exercises. Secondary to that as well, there was the planche lean to pike drill, which I've shared a lot. And I'm doing something similar in today's workout, is another great example of using straight arm strength dynamically. So we get a concentric and eccentric portion of the movement. Another thing that's really hard to develop to get better on in the planche is the lean. A lot of people can do the tuck planche. It's an attainable position for most people with a bit of training. However, a lot of people can't get past that tuck, open tuck phase and extend the legs out. And the reason for this is we never actually train the lean element. That's an important part of the planche. When we do the tuck planche, the shoulders stay very much over the hands. The lever we're trying to balance is very close in together, so we never actually train that lean element. So something like this planche lean press that I'm doing in today's drill, just for some more volume and also to train that lean position, is a great way of training that lean, getting stronger in that lean position, but doing it in an intensity you can hold, because obviously the feet are still on the floor. Then we get to the slightly controversial element, and that is the bench press. Essentially, if we were to look at this drill and we were to flip it 180, it basically is a planche push-up. The decline, the supinated grip all add that planche element to it. So this is weight training done in a way that's specifically focused around building up those gymnastic skills. I've actually trained a lot with gymnasts. One thing that you probably won't be surprised to know is that pretty much all gymnasts have a super strong bench press, especially for their weight. Like, we're talking 1.5 times or more their body weight easily on the bench press. I'm not saying that the bench press got them that strength, but there definitely is some correlation between the two. So you can get stronger at bench press. It's probably going to help some of your bodyweight skills, especially planche, if you do it in a particular way. And otherwise, continuing the grind. And that is basically the end of the tips that I have for you in today's video. If you made it to this far in the video, then thank you for watching, and I hope you found it helpful. As I said, there are a lot of tips that I think are useful. How you apply them is really up to you. I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong way about doing that. It kind of depends on the individual, but you can't go wrong with A, getting strong, and then B, focusing on bent arm and dynamic straight arm movements. I guarantee you will get better results. But as always, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are you going to be doing if you're working towards planche? What are you going to be training for? How are you going to be doing it? Let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. If you just enjoyed this video, you want to help support the channel, support this series, hit that thumbs up button. I would highly appreciate it. Right next to it is also that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. But that's basically been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode of the 2020 checklist. Have a strong week and